Hey guys, sorry about that. I'm not sure what was going on. I think it's because I plugged in and my microphone levels went down a bit, then it affected my noise gate. We should be all good now though. Might adjust just a little bit more. I think we're good though. So I moved my my microphone over to a dedicated USB port, which I'm sure did adjust some things with it. But that should keep the clipping from happening. If it's still happening, let me know, and I'll probably just downgrade to a different version of OBS, because I'm pretty sure that's what's going to be causing it if it's not this. But welcome back. Hopefully you guys are all okay. Hopefully the stream's okay. Minor hiccup there. I'm going to pull up the schedule though. Alright. Yeah, sorry about that. Alright, so we are at stream 5. This is the halfway mark. Hello as well. We're going to be creating an affix today, inspirational, adding lore, which I do have lore given out. It's not necessary that you use the lore that I'm giving you, but it is, if you want to use it, it is in the stream link document, which again can be accessed via exclamation point links. We are adding a town event, and we are creating a new enemy, which the new enemy, I will say, I don't have any art experience, so it's not going to be, there's no going to be no new art, no new animations. It's just going to be a copy of an existing enemy, making a couple new skills, explaining, you know, what you would do on the design and data side of things if you already had the art and animations. So without further ado, let's get into the affix. So I have my spreadsheet open already, explaining the affixes, of course. We went over this again with Royal. We made the Royal Bone Soldier. This time we're making an inspirational courtier. And as we can see here, we scroll over a bit so you guys can see. The inspirational courtier passively buffs teammates while alive. And that's kind of vague. It isn't as clear to see as Royal, where increased loot drops, and then we can see exactly what changes. The inspirational passively buffs teammates, and I think it's important to see how this actually appears in Pitch Black Dungeon. We can see here that I have a game up with the inspirational courtier from PvD, and as we can see here, it's passively buffing the skeleton rabble here with plus 15% dodge and plus 4 speed. And the moment it dies, it's going to get rid of these buffs. So that's what the inspirational does, and each inspirational affix does a different buff. But we're going to be mirroring this almost similarly, but we're going to be doing 10 dodge and 3 speed, just because we're going to make it a little bit less deadly than it is in PvD. So we're going to close this, and we're going to minimize that. We might come back to it, but for now I want to get into something else that I did while the stream was off. I noticed that we had an incompatibility issue with our Russian quirk, because we made it, if you remember, we made it incompatible with alcoholism. Well, we need to go into the alcoholism quirk and make that incompatible with the Russian quirk. So we do have to copy over the vanilla quirk library, and if we search for alcoholism, I did add our Russian quirk to its list of incompatible quirks. So that is one thing I had to do. I'm actually going to upload that. I just didn't want to forget about it, so I'm going to commit it. Fixed incompatibility issue between Russian and alcoholism quirks. Alcoholism quirks. There we go. Alright. So we've got that all uploaded. Now we can work on our affix. So we said we wanted to do it to the courtier. So let's come into our vanilla game. I know we have not touched the courtier at all yet, I believe. We have adjusted the base courtier, and that was with That's right, our potion. We're going to want to keep that, so we actually don't want to copy the vanilla courtier. We want to copy our existing ones. Remember inspirational enemies? We're using skills to buff enemies, and then you change it to the same way Bone Bearer works. Yes, they used to use a specific skill, and then once the Bone Bearer came out, I switched over to that form. I like that a lot better. I think it works better, and it keeps, it doesn't have another skill, so it works out that way. So if you remember, affixes are completely new enemies by definition, but they don't appear that way in game, of course. It's just that's the way that the system was made. So we want to copy one of each tier and rename them D, E, and F, just to keep in line with the way the file system is set up. And then remember, we're going to want to come in here and rename these as well. But coming in here, I see that we don't have the art files, and we don't have the tints. We're going to want those. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to copy the tint and art file for each tier. Because these are new, of course, when we're copying over the data from A, B, and C, it's just going to replace these info files, as you can see, but the art and tints already exist, but not for our new enemies. So we want to make sure that we have those. And of course, we are going to want to rename them as well. But I'm going to copy them over first. Let's rename this, this, and this. And there's not going to be any new abilities. If we come back here, we can check just to be sure. And for inspirational, there are no new abilities and no new AI, just new effects. So that's pretty easy. So I'm going to pull this over just so I can open these quickly. And actually, I'm going to come back here and we're going to open up our localization. Let's get the names in first. So we have the monster name here for the militia. I am going to come in here and just quickly copy these and rename these to courtier. And of course, these are not royal. These are our inspirational courtiers. And I don't remember the names off the top of my head for the courtiers, so I'm actually just going to come over to vanilla. And where are the monster names? They're in miscellaneous now, that's right. And I'm just going to search for courtier. There we go. Courtier, noble, and royalty. Alright. Perfect. Should be, at least. Looks all good. Alright, let's come over here. And let's get our effects open. We're not going to get into that just yet, because we need to see more of how this is actually handled in PBD's files. Let's come over to our spreadsheet, and I'm already actually at the courtiers. We can see that the courtiers for inspirational are D, H, and L. So we can come over to Black Dungeons files, and we can just look at D for right now. We're going to open up the info for that. And then I'm actually going to come back to the main file, as it uses what the Bone Bearer uses. So we can see right here that in the battle modifier, all the way at the end, we have these living other enemy buffs. And we can see the inspirational, courtier, defense B1, and speed B1. So these are just buffs that are called from the buff file, and we already know how to make those. We've had quite a bit of experience making those. But we are going to want to copy this over to each of our battle modifiers. So let's do that. Alright, now I don't think there's anything else that we need from this, because that's about all that is needed to cover the inspirational affix from that file. But one thing that's very commonly missed is the UI. The UI is different. It puts this special kind of outline blue buff symbol, which is different from the regular buff symbol. And this is very necessary for the buffs to actually appear. So we can come back to our courtier and paste this UI in. And it looks fine because we already have the courtier, but if you wanted to, just make sure that it's named skeleton_courtier. And it's based entirely off of the enemy ID. And that should be good. And now we want to make the buffs. And remember we said it was going to be 10 dodge and 3 speed. Let's come back to our mod and get our buffs open. So at the bottom here, let's just go ahead and see if there's any dodge buff that we've already done. I don't think there is, but I'm going to copy this accuracy, since accuracy and dodge are actually very similar in the way they're made. And instead of attack rating, it's just going to be defense rating. And that's 10 dodge. And let's do INSP for inspirational. Let's do courtier. DEF for defense or dodge. B1. Then I'm going to put right below it SPD. And instead of defense rating, it's going to be speed rating. Remember, this is an integer. Although actually, I believe it is a float regardless. So if you put 3.0, it'd still be fine. But that will equal 3 speed. So now let's copy this at the end of here. We should be able to put for each of our inspirational courtiers the exact same buffs. And now if we load up into the game, don't need the effects open. Let's copy each of our 3 new things and let's put them into the modded game. Let's run the localization again because we did add new strings. Where's my batch file? There it is. And let's load up our monsters here. So I have some skeleton, just some skeleton rabble, and skeleton courtier D should be our inspirational courtier. So let's just load this up and see if we get the exact same result as PBD. It's gonna be a bit loud for me when starting up. I can actually fix that here. Just gonna mute that for now. Alright. So we've got our courtier, does say inspirational, and we even have our buffs showing up. Plus 10 dodge, plus 3 speed. That's perfect. And now if we kill him, let's just see if we can quickly take him out. The buffs should disappear. I don't have anything that can reach that row, so let's just get rid of one of these rabble. Perfect. Now we can start doing some damage to him. Perfect. And now our buffs disappear. Beautiful. So that's very easy. Inspirational is very easy to get working. You just can't miss things like the UI, tray icon, but otherwise it's very, very simple. Much simpler than it used to be. But we have an affix. So let's go ahead and get that uploaded so that we have all of that committed. Remember to select all. Let's do skeleton, or let's do inspirational. Skeleton Courtier affix. Cool. And normally I would get this into our encounters, but our encounters are actually going to be revolving around our map. They're not going to be appearing in regular encounters, at least not that I've planned yet. If we do, we can do that later, but for now, we're not. Let's close everything. Let's get a new slate up. And if you remember, next up is lore. So I have included the lore that we're going to put into the game in Stream 5's assets. And you can see if you open up the text file with any text editor, we have our 5 titles and each of the sets of text that we're going to be putting in there. So let's come over to the vanilla game because we need to see what the journals look like, and they are all housed in the journal string table. So you can see here that the entries for the titles are right here. They're named very simply journal page, title, and then the number that the journal page corresponds to. And the text is simply journal page text, and then the number that it corresponds to. So that's very, 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 very simple. And we can come into our string table and set up a new section. Journal pages. And let's put new comment. Let's just copy over one of these. Let's just copy over the zeros here. Now we want this number to be, we don't want it to overlap because it will cause problems. So we can see that the final journal page in vanilla is 21. So we will simply make ours 22. And we'll get rid of the title and the text. And then copy this 5 times because we have 5, or copy it 4 times because we have 5 journal pages. Make sure to give each of them a new ID. And there we go. Now we can come over to our assets, which I closed for some stupid reason. Let's simply copy in the titles. Let's just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then make sure that these are different names. And these are going to drop in order, and what we're going to be doing to make them do that is kind of cheating the loot system a bit. And I'll show you how that's done once we get our text in. So let's copy and paste our text. Go, there's 2, 3, 4, and finally 5. Perfect. So let's make sure to copy this for each of the other languages like we've been doing. And we also actually just forgot to do that for our courtiers. Let's go ahead and copy everything up to enemies and just replace it for each language. Finally, or Korean. Alright, there we go. We can close our journal pages, we can close this. And now let's open up our loot file. I'm gonna remember what we did with the skeleton bones that we're actually going to be using this code today. So we put our bone trinkets, our new rarity, up at 1 million chance compared to loot table T, which is the vanilla trinkets table at 1. And this effectively makes it so that when you earn all of the bone trinkets that we added, you'll then just get regular trinkets. And this way, we won't ever run out of loot to give to the player. They will always have something to earn. We can utilize this exact same system to stagger loot pages so that they drop in a specific order. So to explain this, I'm going to come over to vanilla, or to PBD's loot. And if we ignore the length of this because it's extremely long, I'm going to come down to, let's look at Emery lore. So I have 5 lore pages right here for a character in my mod called Emery. And you can see here that the journal page with an ID of 215 drops at a chance of 1 million. And then the table, Emery lore 2, has a chance of 1. And this effectively makes it so that you are guaranteed to earn her first page before it pulls from this table. And this table gives you the next page and then goes to the next table. And this keeps going until you have earned all of these Emery lore pages. So we're going to be doing that as well. And we can simply come in here and we can copy the existing Emery lore just to make it easy on ourselves. And we're going to be calling this, we can call this anything, really. We can call it our, well, since it's gesture lore, let's just call it gesture lore. And just paste it in for now, and we can add the numbers after we paste it. So we want this to pull from 2, this will be 2, then 3, 3, 4, and 4, 5, and 5. And if we remember our, I forgot our IDs, so let's come back into our localization a sec. 22 to 26. Let's go 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So now when we give this table a chance to happen, we simply don't need to address any of these other tables. Because if we pull from this and we have 4 of the pages, it'll simply say, well, they already own this page, so go to this one, they already own this one, they already own that one, they already own that one, but they don't own this final one. We want to add in this lore to just the regular journal pages. We want them to drop wherever regular journal pages drop. And we're going to do that by overriding the vanilla journal page loot file. So for right now, let's close all of this and let's come over to the vanilla game. And we're going to go into the DLC, and I believe in the Crimson Court loot, we should see this common overrides. And we can see that these tables are overriding the ones that already exist within the regular loot. And we're going to want to do that as well. So we're simply just going to copy this for the moment. And we're going to call this our mod overrides. And if I'm not mistaken, this should allow us to simply override the existing loot tables that exist without having to actually include the vanilla loot file. So let's come in here and let's find J, because that is the code for journals. They're somewhere around here. Did I miss them? I think I missed them. They must already be in the overrides. Weird. Or they're not. It's weird. I don't think the journal page exists in vanilla at the moment. I guess not. So they got rid of, it looks like they got rid of the J page and instead made Courtiers drop. Oh, they just made a journal only. So we actually want to override this journal only loot table. Let's come in here and let's copy this. And in our overriding loot file, let's paste this. We're gonna add a gold value to the pages like you did in PBD. I wasn't planning on it, but I absolutely could. I don't see why not. So instead of being page 1 through 21, we're going to add a table. I think I just I made this override in the vanilla an accident. Let's save that for a second. And let's cut and paste it over here. Wait. Where did I put the overrides? I lost my overrides here. Did I put them in PBD by accident? I might have. That sounds very much like me. I might have put them there. I don't know what we did with that. Oh, we put them in our string table because we're dumb. That's okay. Alright, so we want to open up our regular loot, and we're just going to copy the ID for a table. And instead of T, we're going to put our first gesture lore. And we're going to keep these at a same chance of 1. And this way, there's an equal chance to get a vanilla page and an equal chance to get one of our new gesture pages. And when these new gesture pages are all used up, you simply can't earn them anymore. And we got a request in chat, as you read, to make lore pages equal money. And I think that's a very good idea. And we're going to do that for all pages, including our new ones. And we're going to come into PBD again, because that's where I do it. So in our inventory for PBD, you can see in our supply, we have this whole list of journal pages, and we made each of their IDs worth 500. And we did this for all over 200 pages in PBD, and we're going to do that for vanilla as well. So we come over to our mod supply, which is much, much smaller. I'm simply going to copy up to 26 because we have 26 loot pages. But you're gonna just want to name, they're going to be in the same format as our other supplies, but instead of type, you're going to want to put a journal page. As for the ID, it is the number, and as we know, it goes up to 26, from 0 to 26. You can't purchase them, but you can sell them, and of course they can only stack to 1. Now you can't make journal pages stack at all. I mean, you can set this to 100, but the thing is you can't earn more than a single of the same page, so just keep it at 1. It's not going to matter. So they're going to be worth 500 gold each. I think that's a pretty fair way to distribute them. If we come in here, we can save. So we have our new lore pages in, and I'm going to go ahead and copy over the 3 folders that we have changed files in. Run the localization again. And I want to test out how these loot pages drop, just so that you can see how they work. So just so we don't forget our new loot table, it is gesture lore. I'm going to come into let's just do a brigand cutthroat. And in his loot, I'm going to give him 5 counts of our new gesture lore, because we have 5 pages. And now if we load it up with him and kill him, it should present us with all 5 pages in order of our new lore. So let's load it up. And I'm going to take a drink while it's doing that. So we have our Brigand Cutthroat. Let's just quickly dispatch of him. Let's buff up the A-bomb damage. And we should be able to dispatch him if we can hit him in one hit. There we go. Perfect. Ah, there we go. 5 pages. And if we read them, you can see our title, our text, and we can see 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3, 4, and finally 5. And there we go. And if we finish the dungeon, it should show that they're worth 500 each. I believe you can also see that they're worth 500 each if I you'd have to loot something, but they will be worth 500 each if you finish the quest. I know that's working. We don't have to test that. So let's get rid of our Brigand Cutthroat changes because we don't actually want that to be changed. So right click, let's go to revert, and we'll simply revert the Cutthroat. And we're all good. So we should now have our journal pages added, and they are worth gold, so let's commit these changes. So let's do just your lore pages added. Enter lore pages worth 500 gold. There we go. Yeah, I know it's working. I mean, I could test it just by speeding it up and quickly finishing the dungeon. I don't really see a need to. I know it's working. That's all good. Next up, we have town events. And that's going to be very different from what we've done. I'm going to open up our vanilla set of files here. So as you know, town events just appear at certain intervals depending on what you've set in the settings, and they can contain a variety of things like buffs, discounts, they can lock certain activities, etc. Start certain quests, which we're going to be utilizing later. And this is all stored in a single set of files right here. We can see all the town events. We can even open up the guarantees and the settings. I'm going to go over the settings here. We can see that with town events off, you have no chance. With them set to normal, you have an increasing chance for them to appear each week if you don't get one, and plentiful increases that chance a little bit more. That should be fairly simple. For PvD, I have set these all to be the same because I think town events are a very integral part of the game, and they're not only negative, they are positive as well. In the town events, let's simply go over the Embark Party buff, Crips buff. You can see that this, if we come down to the data, we're going to skip all this just for now. You can see that the Embarking Party gets a buff to the Resolve XP in the Crips and the damage in the Crips. And these are all located within the buffs file, which is down here in shared. Let's just copy and paste one of these for searching. And we can see that these are set up very similar to our Until Quest End buffs. Or Until Combat End, but instead of Combat End, it's Quest End. We can see that it increases the Resolve XP in Dungeon for the Crips, and these are also in Dungeon the Crips for damage low and damage high. I'm going to come up here to base chance. You can see that the base chance for this is 0. And the per not rolled additional chance, which means every week if it hasn't rolled, it increases in chance, is also 0. Because this can't appear. This is a guaranteed event if you do an activate quest in the Crypts or in the Ruins. We can see in other ones that you will have a base chance. And this again is the base chance for that particular event divided by the sum of all events in the in the file. So setting it to 0, of course, would make it impossible to occur, and setting it to something like 200 would make it pretty much occur every time, almost. So let's come back up to our embarking party buff, and we can see that there's a cooldown of 1 week. These are in weeks, and there are requirements for this to occur. First off, there is a minimum week requirement of 6 weeks. So this cannot appear any time before the 6-week mark. And this can get as high as something like the Shrieker quest, which is at a minimum week of 42. It does not require any dead heroes. Dead heroes is mainly for the resurrection event, of course, because if you didn't have any dead heroes, you wouldn't have any to revive. Hero level counts. This is mainly used for stuff like Wolf, V-Wolf, if you want to call him that. Where is he? He's somewhere around here. Should be down here. Oh yeah, here it is. So you need 4 level 5 heroes. Upgrades purchased is mainly so that if you have I don't know if upgrades purchased is ever used. I think it is for the for granting a free upgrade, right? Is it? Ah, yeah. So you need to have at least the requirement code of A for the armor upgrades. That makes sense. And trinket storage count is again only for stuff like Shrieker, who needs trinkets to actually, be in the storage for it to be used. Of course, if you don't have any for it to steal, it doesn't have any to steal. And the ambience parameter IDs and the tone are almost entirely based around the art that appears, as well as the sprite and sprite attachment. You'll notice, like, the tone, if it's good, it will make it into a positive buff, and if it's bad, it will have that red outline. That's a little bit more difficult to notice, but if you have noticed it in game, you'll notice that these are just handled by good, bad, and neutral. There should be some neutral ones down here. Yeah. And there are sprites that attach to a specific building. These are housed, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they're in town event. These are where all of the panels are located. We're going to have to make those. We're just going to copy one, though. They might be in building. Yes. So they are in the individual buildings, I believe. Maybe some of them are. I've never made them. I'm not into the into the art side of things. But they will definitely be within the town somewhere, and you can search for the sprite PNG file that it references. Of course. So if we search like town event laying low, guess they're not. Somebody is more versed in the art and wants to make their own sprites, you're going to have to do a little bit of digging in there to figure it out. We're not going to have to worry about that, since the event we're going to be making is just going to be a copy of an existing event. Simply to explain where everything is going to be called from. So the event we're going to be making is going to be half off of all treatment. So if we come to somewhere in this file, there should be, there's free abbey, there's free tavern, free sanitarium, and free all activities. But we want to make a half off of all activities event for our new map that we're going to be creating. So for right now, let's just keep those open. Let's come into our town events file And for right now, we're going to want to copy the base and the guarantees. And in our mod, we're going to simply come into campaign and make a new folder called town events. And paste these in. And we're going to want to rename this to our_mod. And we're going to want to keep this the same because we are going to have to overwrite it. I don't believe that these are appendable. But I'm simply going to delete every existing one from this, just to make it easy on us. There we go. And for the base town events, we have our free all activities. Let's come in here and copy up to the comma and paste this. And we're going to simply call this half off treatment. So if we come back to the base town events, we can see that there are these discount Abbey, and we can see right immediately. Hi Chibiko, I'm terrible with names. I insert name here. We can see that it locks the flagellation, but discounts prayer and meditation. We're going to want to copy all of that. So we don't want free activities, of course. So we can get rid of all the data. But we want all the activity costs to be changed. So we can see that prayer changed by minus 50%. These are floats expressed as in decimal, or these are percentage in float form, which is a percentage represented as a decimal. So of course you would have to move over the decimal point twice and then convert it to a percentage. So that is minus 50%. And we're going to want to do it for all the activities, but we don't really know what the activities are named. We can get some of them here. We might actually be able to get all of them here if we come down to all the activities. We can see Meditaire, prayer, flagellation, bar, gambling, and brothel, and then treatment and disease treatment. And that's actually all the ones that we want. We are working on town events at the moment. That is correct. So I'm going to copy this and paste it once initially, and then we're going to copy it again, but with the decimal, or with the comma. And we're going to want to paste it 3 times for the Abbey, 3 times for the tavern, and then twice for work and disease treatment. And moving this over to the other view for right now, we can come over here and copy meditation, prayer, flagellation, gambling, brothel, I missed the bar, bar, gambling, brothel, treatment and disease treatment. And there we go. And we see here that it calls the town event town fair sprite. That is okay. If we wanted it to not call any sprite, we can simply get rid of these two. The tone is good. We know that for sure. Minimum week is fine. We don't want this to appear though. We want it to appear based on a guarantee, and we'll get into that in a second. But for right now, I'm going to set this to 0. Set this to 0. Careful. Minimum week is fine since it's not going to appear just yet. And that looks perfect. So for right now, let's move this over to the other view. And we're going to come into this guarantees. And this is in the modded game, so we actually want to get rid of that and open up our own guarantees. And we can see here that the dungeon type is represented, the quest type is also represented, and the event ID that it guarantees. So for right now, I can tell you that the map we're going to make is going to be contained specifically within the crypts. So we can go ahead and copy any of the existing crypts one. And the quest type is going to be a kill boss type. And the event that it's going to guarantee is going to be our event ID. And for right now, this isn't actually going to, we're not going to run into this because I'm actually going to set the quest type to be null. Well, actually, I'm going to call it to do fill. I don't know if it's going to cause any problems, but right now it's not going to interfere with any of the other quest types because there is no quest type called to do fill. I can promise you that. But I should be able to then come over here, and I already have a script set up to test this. And again, I can't share this just yet. Let's see if it causes any issues. Because there's a lot that we're missing to make this work at the moment, but I want to see if it's actually going to cause an issue. So I've already determined to call this specific town event. Perfect. So we can see here that it's calling this town event. We're missing strings. We have no background. We have no description. And it's listing all of our changes in a list that's just going to cause problems. But we can see that the event is actually being called. And we might even be able to see, if I use some dev cheats here, we should be able to see that the cost is halved from what it is normally. It's very, very much lowered, and this should be the same for all treatment. Yeah. Perfect. So we know that the buffs are working, but we need strings and we need a background. So let's come over to the modded game here. Let's take a look into the localization. Now I need to see where the town events strings are located. I'm going to bet that they're in here though. Let's go ahead and search for an existing town event. Let's just search for free sanitarium. Doesn't matter which one, we just need to find one. Perfect. That is the VO. We don't want the VO. We want town event description. Perfect. So let's come over to our localization. Let's make a new section called town events. And then add another blank section underneath, as you've been doing. Let's copy over this description. We'll fill it in later. And I'm going to search again. We're going to look for the title. Doesn't matter which one, again, just any title. And I'm going to put it above. So let's get rid of the dead recruit and this free sanitarium and whatever data is in there. Let's go ahead and go back to our event and copy our ID. Let's call this, because it's going to be rewarded after a quest in the crypts, after our buff quest. Also, Red Dye, welcome, hello. Great to see you here. Let's call this, just for right now, Champions of the Ruin. Yes, they are called the Ruins in game. And let's just put a description in here. Recent successes against a sizable foe resulted in fair, unlike a scene. It can be anything. Just came up with it, off the top of my head here. You could just do fair without the E, but fair with an E is kind of like medieval. So recent successes against a sizable foe resulted in a fair, unlike any scene. And that's going to be half off everything. So we're going to copy this again for all of our existing languages. And when we compile the localization again, we should now see that our new language, or our new strings are going to be put in. So let's come over here, copy and paste our localization, and run the batch file. Alright, so let's load up the event again. We're still going to be missing some things, and we're still going to want to adjust some things. but we should now see that our localization is in place. Champions of the ruins and recent successes against a sizable foe have resulted in a fare unlike any seen. But we have two problems. First off, we're missing an image, and second off, those buffs are ridiculous, or those discounts, I should say. And we can fix that pretty easily. So let's close this, and let's come over to the modded game again. And if you remember what I said before, town event background images are in town event, and if we sort these by details just for the moment, we can see that they're named town event, period, image, underscore, and it looks like the name of the event.png. So we can see our free all activities here is kind of like the town fair one, and we're just going to use that one for now. So let's come in here, let's create a town folder, and then inside that we're going to do town event, and we're going to copy over this free all activities and put our ID in there, and that is half off treatment. So we should now get the image in game when we copy over that. We need one more thing, and hopefully we have the localization still open, which we do. And if we look at the free all activities, we can see this town event info. We see it for only a specific number. We don't see it for all of them. We can see that it simply says all treatment facilities are free. Well, we're going to want to copy that and put it below. And instead of free all activities, we're going to do half off treatment. And this will simply override the automatically generated description or the explanation of what the town event does and what's in our own. So we're going to put half off all treatment facilities. Perfect. I don't like that treatment facilities is capitalized, but that should be perfect. And now we're just going to copy this for each additional, I just put this in Chinese, that's okay. Let's start back up at the top though. So we fix the description and we fix the image, and we're going to load it up one more time. All right, should be all of them. Perfect. Let's minimize that. Let's copy over our localization and campaign folders again. Run our batch file. And now when we start it up to the town event, we should have everything appearing correctly, if we've done everything correctly. There we go. Champions of the Ruins. We have our image, we have our description, and we have our new buff description that shows and doesn't overlap the entire screen. And that's about as simple as it is to add a town event. And we can even see the sprite from the town fair is applying itself to the statue, which is really cool. So we've added our own town event and it's all ready. If we come in and we turn on the debug, it's probably going to get mad and say that Russian is an incompatible quirk that doesn't exist. Let me fix that. We might not have copied it over simply. Let's check it. Let's make sure that so Russian is an incompatible quirk for alcoholism. However, that is an existing quirk. Not sure why that shows up as not existing. It's very possible that we just didn't copy over our quirks from last time. Let's try doing that and see if that still exists. Always a good idea to turn on debug output though. You can catch a lot of issues before uploading your mod. Still says it. Not sure why that is. It's not worded incorrectly. It could just be a problem with the debug output in game, because there's nothing wrong with how that's set up. And if you've set up yours similarly, it's not going to have a problem. As long as you haven't accidentally put like a comma there and not put the next one, because that would absolutely cause a problem. But the way it's set up now should not giving us any problem at all. So we've added our town event. We know that it works. We still have to make sure that when the time comes that we put the proper quest type in here, which will be a custom quest type. And we'll get to that when we actually create our quests, or sooner if I ever go over quests, which I don't think I do before then. Oh no, we go over quest editing in stream 7, so we will be taking care of it then. We'll create our new type and get ready for it. That's perfect. Perfect timing. So now that we've got our town event set up, let's go ahead and commit all the changes that we've made. Remember to select all, let's do new half off treatment town event. And that looks perfect. Let's go ahead and commit that. And now we've got it all in there. Now finally, what we're going to be doing is getting something ready for the summonable curios that we're going to be having for the next stream on Monday. So this is going to be very similar to an affix like I mentioned earlier in the stream. This is going to be a copy of the skeleton soldier, which is the skeleton militia. And instead of it appearing randomly in certain quests, it's going to appear when you summon it from a curio, much like the shambler. But we aren't going to set up that yet. We're simply going to set up the enemy and make sure that it works. So it's going to be a copy of the skeleton soldier, but instead of having a simple sword strike and sword strike weak, we're going to give it some different, we're going to give it one new move, we're going to give it some changed stats, and we're also going to give it our bone loot table, as well as giving it an extra initiative. But for right now, I'm simply going to come into our skeleton ABC. What did we change for these, by the way? Do you remember if we changed anything about the vanilla skeletons and why they're here? I know that we changed the quartz here. We gave it the potion, but I don't think we actually needed the vanilla militia to be here. That's okay. We can delete it afterwards. I don't think we actually use these for anything. We can see what commit we put them in on, though. Yeah, so we gave it the royal affix, but we didn't actually modify A, B, or C at all. So we can delete these after we're done copying them, just so that we don't have any extra files laying around. So for now, we're going to call these G, H, and I. Because remember, we want one for each tier of difficulty. And now that we have these, we can delete these. Let's come in here and rename these. Perfect. So we're going to call these our invigorated skeletons. And that's simply going to be because these are going to be summonable from curios in the crypts, like the locked sarcophagus and the Iron Maiden. And I'll show you what we're going to do with those on Monday, but for now we're simply going to get them implemented. So I'm going to open up these files, the info. All we need is the info and the art files open. I'm gonna get them organized here. So we're gonna have the info and then the art, info and then art for each difficulty. And we're gonna need our localization open as well. And we're gonna need some other things open, but for right now, we're simply going to get these new enemies in. So I'm gonna copy the militia D, E, and F that already exist. And we're gonna get rid of the affix, because this is not an affix, of course. We are going to name these invigorated. And remember to put G, H, and I. So much like our affixes, we have simply the apprentice, veteran, and champion versions of these enemies in order. And for this invigorated skeleton that appears, it's going to do quite a few things. First off, we're going to want to give it two turns per round. And this is as simple as changing the initiatives right here in the initiative line, the number to 2. And now each of these has 2 initiatives per round. But we're also going to guarantee a surprise, because I think it's pretty surprising that a skeleton comes out of a curio. It's not expected, and it's not going to be expected to the people playing our mod. So we're going to come down here to the battle modifier line, and we can see right here the 4 variables that determine whether or not the enemy can be surprised or surprise. So we can see that it can surprise and it can be surprised. We want to get rid of this can be surprised, because we don't want the enemy to spawn and get surprised, because that kind of defeats the purpose of an enemy that always surprises. So we're going to set this to false for each of the enemies. Perfect. And we want always surprised to be true, because it's always going to surprise the heroes. But we want one other thing. We want to adjust its HP and its speed, because this is kind of invigorated. You know, it's going to be a little bit stronger, it's going to be a little bit faster, a little bit tougher, it's going to have that boosted initiative and boosted speed. And we're going to simply boost the speed on each of them up here on SPD by 2 for each tier. Alright, that looks good. And we're going to boost its HP by 50%. Which is quite a bit. Remember, this is only going to be a single skeleton that appears. It's not going to be a full team of enemies. So you might, if you have a fast team, get the few hits in to kill it quickly, or it might get a few hits off on you before dying. So of course, 50% of 10 is 15. 15 we can round up. I don't think that's going to be too much of issue. We can simply do times 15 times 1.5. Let's round up on these, since these are going to be a bit, it's a single enemy that you're fighting. So let's do 32 on that. And that looks good. But we want to add a new kind of sword strike, and we want to give it our loot table. So let's do our loot table first. Remember, it's the T skeleton. So let's copy the code for A for right here and get our T skeleton table. And let's just put this into each of our enemies. And now they will drop loot table A and loot table for T skeleton. And now we want to get a sword strike in, and I want to do a sword strike that affects the that makes like bleed. I want to do one that makes you bleed as well as does a little bit of damage. So for this, I'm simply going to call it Sword Strike. Let's just do Sword Strike Bleed, just so that we know what it does. And I'm gonna put it right below our normal Sword Strike. We're gonna call this _bleed. Now, as we see here, it's a type melee, and this affects this affects only buffs that like do melee, buffs. So for some reason you have in your mod a enemy that buffs other enemies' melee damage, it's only going to apply to these skills with the tag of melee. I think the attack, which of course is the accuracy, looks okay. I want damage to be a bit lower because it is going to apply a bleed. So let's simply adjust this by a default percentage for each tier. I have started editing the militia H, it's not going to be a problem. Let's just do 10 times, let's just do 10 times, I would say 33% lower max damage. Or lower damage on all tiers, I would say 33% is fair. So let's do then 2 and 7, and we'll make it target the exact same ranks as the sword strike. Glad I caught the stream. It's really interesting to see the inner workings of modding. Well, thanks. I mean, you know all about the art and animation side of things, Red Dye, having helped out with PBD's, a massive amount of PBD's artwork over the course of its lifetime. And I don't know anything about art. So let's simply just do 8 times 0.66 to get the average number that we want to put in here. And remember, we're going to call this sword strike underscore bleed. And for I, we're going to do the same thing. Sword strike underscore bleed. Red Dye did all of the trinket and potion artwork, as well as some additional things. If I pull up PBD's files over here, I can pull up some of the things she's done quickly. All of our unique potion artwork is going to be in here, as well as the trapezohedrons, all of the tarot cards, which are perhaps my favorite set ever. The bone artwork she also did, which we're using in our mod tutorials here. And I know I guarantee I'm missing some things. Oh, she's done some awesome, there's going to be a bit of a, I don't want to spoil what she's done for our Darkest Dungeon overhaul. But if you've played PBD and you've beat it, then you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'm not going to spoil that, but it's really cool. So 5 times 0.66, I believe, is just going to round off to the 3. We're going to keep that at there, and then 15 is going to be 10. Let's just do 3 and 10. And we're going to save that for now. We are going to add effects to these. So let's open up our mods effects. And let's put down here, let's put a new section. Let's do invigorated skeleton. And this is going to apply a bleed. And simply to make things easier on us, let's just go and find a bleed in the base effects. And they should be pretty soon here. Right here, we have bleeds. So we're going to want 3 tiers of bleeds because there are 3 tiers of enemies, of course. So let's paste this in and get rid of bleed 2 and bleed 4. And we're going to call this invig scale bleed 1. We're going to do that for each. And let's see if all of our numbers look good. So we see it will attack a target, it's negative, chances are normal, the bleed DOT and duration is about normal, on hit yes, on miss it won't, and it can apply on death, yes. That looks all good. So let's come back to our skeletons here, and let's, on our bleed effect, put dot effects. Dot effect. I'm blanking on whether or not it's dot effect or dot effects. I should know this. Why did I open up a barrel? I opened up a barrel to look for effects. That's not going to work. Duh. It is dot effect. Good to remember that. Let's copy in our effect for each tier. Remember, we're going to want to rename this for veteran to 3. And here, we're going to want to rename it to 5. Now that's not all we need to do. Once we add a new attack, we want to do two things. We need to add the attack to our art so that the art knows what animationable. And we can simply do this by copying the Sword Strike weak, because they are the exact same for Sword Strike and weak, and putting bleed. And we're going to want to do this for each art file. That looks perfect. And then we're going to actually want to come into our AI and tell the AI to look for the effect. And we've never dealt with AI in our mod yet. And it's pretty overwhelming, it can look like, but it's actually pretty simple how it works. I've worked extensively in that file, both for vanilla game and for BD. First thing we're going to do, though, before we do that, is come in here and copy our strings for each of the languages. We don't want to forget to do this. And our strings are starting to get pretty massive because we keep adding more content. Let's go ahead and do this, and then we'll get on to AI. Alright, so we should have all of the strings in for those. So let's close this. We don't need this. We don't need... Actually, we do need strings. Because we have to add our new attack name. Otherwise, it's just going to appear as a broken string. Let's open that back up. And I'm going to put underneath enemies, I'm going to put a new section called enemy attacks. We're going to be using this again as well for our new boss that we're going to be making. So if we come over here to the modded game and we open up our miscellaneous strings, we know that our sword strike, or we should know that that's an ID, and we're just going to type in sword strike. You can see right here that it's str, monster skill, and then the skill ID. That should be pretty easy. So we're going to come here, we're going to name this sword strike bleed, much like our ID is named in here. And let's call this, we can call this graveyard something. We can call this, like graveyard maiming. That's pretty nasty sounding, right? And we're going to paste this under each of our enemy names here. We're not going to get too into AI today because we're going to be getting into that pretty heavily in the next few days. And there's also extensive documentation to help in the official modding guide, which can be viewed on Steam. So now we do have our strings done. We have all of these done. We have all of our effects in place and all of that. So we can close that. And we're going to come back over to our raid folder. But this time we're going to copy over the AI folder, which has our monster brains. So we're going to copy this, come in here, and immediately we're going to be greeted by a very, very long file, which is only long because about 2 years ago, Red Hook added unique AI to each enemy in the game. But now we're just going to look at the default AI, and I'm going to explain kind of how it's set up. So as with almost everything else we've been working with, there is an ID, and this ID is called within the enemy's file, which will open up our monsters again because we do want to see what the ID is for these. So we can see that this calls the monster brain of ID skeleton soldier A. And we have immediately, we're greeted by kind of 4 sections: skill cooldowns, skill selection desires, target selection desires, and bonus initiative desires. So we're going to go over the skill cooldowns right now, and they're very, very simple. Up at the top here we can see the skill cooldowns with this combat skill ID, the ID here, and the amount of turns before the enemy can use it again. And that's pretty much all it is. The skill cooldown section will not get any more complicated than that. You simply put the skill ID and how many turns before it can be used again. And these skill IDs correspond with these here. And we're probably going to be using that with our skeletons because we don't want our skeletons to like spam bleed too much. Or maybe we do. I think we do, right? We want them to be pretty mean. So maybe we won't give them a cooldown. We can see in the skill selection desires, we can see this type. And these are predetermined types. We can see preferred skill, random skill, healing skills. We can even see if we come down a bit further, we can see specific skills. Don't get too worked up if you see all these different things and you're like, well, how do I do it? I would say look at a specific enemy, because we are going to be working on a specific enemy here. And just focus on that, because the skeleton soldiers are very simple. They only have 2 base attacks, and they target a random target. And that's all they will ever do. Their AI is very, very simple in that it will have an equal chance, really, to call their 2 attacks, and they will attack a random target. Non-discriminatory. But we want to create new AI, because our vanilla skeletons don't have this bleed attack. So if we give the bleed attack to these regular soldiers that don't have it, it's going to cause errors. So let's come over to our AI, and let's make a copy. And we're going to call this our mod, Monster Brains. And we're going to open this up and put it next here. And I'm simply going to come in here and delete everything. I'm just going to make it easy on us, and we're just going to delete all of it. And scroll back to the top. And we're going to put this in. And then scroll to the bottom and get the final little tidbits that we need. And there we go. And now we have a blank enemy monster file. And we're going to want to copy the skeleton soldiers. So these are all the same. We can see that there are no skill cooldown differences between the difficulties. There are no skill chances based on difficulty, and there are no targeting differences based on the difficulty. So we can simply come in here and we can copy the skeleton A. But we're going to want to name it something different for our invigorated soldiers. So we're going to call it invig_skeleton soldier A. And let's copy and paste this a couple additional times, because it's simply good practice to have different AI for each tier of enemy, even if you don't utilize different AI code. And the reason that is because if you want to change later on the difficulty for a, if you want like maybe a specific skill to occur more often on a different difficulty, you already have the AI set up in the files and different AI set up in your monster brains. And that way you can quickly change something and upload it, and you don't need to mess around with different files. So let's come over to our skeletons now and give them these AI IDs in place of their original IDs. Perfect. Now we can close these again because they do have the new IDs. So we can see in the skill selection desires, they have an equal chance, because much like the other things we've worked with, it is the base chance divided by the sum of all chances. So they have an equal chance to do their sword strike or their sword strike weak. And the reason this is because the sword strike weak is only usable in position 4. And these are only usable in position 1, 2, and 3. So if in position 4, the enemy is only going to have an equal ability to do, or it's only going to have one ability to do. So it doesn't matter what, you can give the sword strike weak a million chance, and it's not going to affect how he works because he only has a single ability that he can use in position 4. And we can see in the target selection desires that he targets a random target with a base chance. And if we were to fill out the specific combat ID, he would use that specific skill randomly. But for right now, we won't get too deep into that. We're going to keep the target selection desires the same and the ID, or the chances, the same. Red die, alrighty, I gotta head out. Try to catch some more of these. Thank you for streaming. So today I heard ginger lemon tea, good stuff. We have the ginger lemon tea. Well, thanks for showing up, Red die. It was really cool to see you, and take care. Thank you for all the work, because we are using some of your assets in our stream. So thank you again. So like I said, he has an equal chance to do these two skills because they're not going to overlap each other. But we do have some overlap. Now we can see that we have two skills that can be used in the same ranks. So we need to be careful about that, especially if you start adding, tons of skills. But for right now, we can see that if we add in another section here, and we want to name this sword strike bleed, in position 1, 2, or 3, he's now going to have a 50% chance to do his sword strike or his sword strike bleed. And it's important to remember that the more complicated it gets, the more things can break and the more ways that your base chances are going to affect each other. So messing with enemy AI requires you to be very careful and very understanding of how these chances are set up. So this all looks good. We have, it's the same AI set up for each of the different difficulties, but we simply wanted to add in our sword strike bleed skill. So we can close all this because we actually have everything set up. But I want to come over here and delete just the, I put it over here again. I do that a lot. That looks good. So let's go back out to our main directory and let's copy in all of the changed folders. Perfect. And let's run our localization again. There we go. And let's create our invigorated skeleton. Let's just create the apprentice one. Let's do skeleton underscore militia underscore, and remember DEF is our royal, GHI is our invigorated. So if we type in G, we should get our invigorated skeleton. And hopefully he does our new attack skill and we don't have any problems with it. So let's check the name right away, invigorated bone skeleton, and it guaranteed the surprise like we set it up to. We can see that it has 2 initiatives, and we can see its speed is 4, which is 2 higher than the regular bone militias. So I'm going to pass some turns just so we can see if it does its abilities. And hopefully it does. There's Graveyard Slash, that's the normal one. It's got another initiative though. Another Graveyard Slash. I'm going to speed up the game a bit here. Let's just see if it does Graveyard Maiming. Unfortunately it missed, so we can't test if it did the bleed, but we did see that it did have the correct name. And now we can even see in the bottom right here, it says Graveyard Maiming under skills, and it has a little bleed icon. So I'm fairly confident that it will apply the bleed. Hopefully it hits her. Perfect. And it did the bleed. 2 for 3 rounds. So this is all working perfectly. And once we implement it on Monday, it should work without issue. So our new enemy is implemented. I do want to test it one more time and kill it and see if it drops our new bone trinkets, in addition to the A table that it pulls. So let's actually go for the kill here, which is going to be a little tough with the surprise that we got, but that's the intent of it. So now, because it has 2 initiatives, that blight is actually going to be doubly powerful. It's going to apply twice in a single round. Let's get a stun on it, hopefully. Cool. We're down to 6 health, and hopefully we can get a quick hit off on it. Perfect. And there we go. We have a regular trinket, which was pulled from the A table, and one of our new bone trinkets, which is awesome. Which is some of the artwork that Red Dye did, which is awesome. So we know that everything is now working with our new enemy without issue. And we can come in here and we can commit it. Let's make sure to select everything. Remember, we got rid of some of those files that were unneeded. And we implemented invigorated bone soldiers. And I think that's about all we did. We did the AI, but that's all part of it. Yeah. Let's do okay. And because we've been very carefully keeping our mod file size low, our mod is only about 1.2 megabytes. And you want to be careful about that simply because if you're starting to add very large amounts of unneeded animations or sprites, you can quickly, have encounter an issue where you have this massive mod that now isn't compatible with other mods. So this is all good. And that actually covers everything we wanted to cover today. We created our inspirational courtier, added lore, we added a town event, and we created our new enemy for Monday. So with that, I can open it up to questions. Are there any questions about the things you've seen? Do you want me to repeat anything or go over something? Now is the time to do so. You also have time to do it on stream 8, but I would recommend doing it now simply because it's already on my mind. So are there any questions? That's good. If there aren't any questions, I hope that means that I've done my job well and have explained how to mod in these specific things. So feel free to ask them while I'm explaining what we'll do on Monday. But for right now, I will explain what we'll do on Monday. So Monday's stream is going to contain a new affix charming, and that's going to require us to do a little bit more difficult of AI work. And but again, it's just creating an affix, so it should be a lot of fun. And we're going to be working on editing curios because we're going to be creating our summonable enemies. So we're going to be going over the editable curios and then adding in our interactions to make that possible. And that's going to take a little bit of time, but again, there is no time actually set for these streams. I kind of set them up initially to be about the same time in length, but I suspect with stream 9 and 10, we will have quite long streams, and if I need to extend that into like an 11th stream, I might have to. The question, how did you test the town event so fast? I use dev commands. I can't share those commands at the moment. I don't think. I'll have to ask Tyler if I can share it. But I apologize for not being able to. I simply use these on stream because it's much quicker than like loading them up. if you want to force it to appear without commands, go into your base town event and just ramp up the base chance for it to happen. And on an existing save, quickly run a mission and it should appear. Also, is there an event that give you trinket? I don't think there is a possibility for an event to give you a trinket. Yeah. Yeah, charming should be fun to implement. So we'll have fun with that. Yeah, sorry, I don't think it's possible to guarantee a trinket. Unfortunately, modding restrictions do make it so that if the ability doesn't occur, usually in vanilla, you can't add the ability. So we can't add new mechanics, you can simply utilize the ones that already exist creatively. Much like my affix system is actually just creating new enemies and making them appear in different dungeons. That's kind of utilizing the existing mechanics to create a new creative mechanic in its own right. So if that's all the questions, we can call the stream there. Had a good hour and a half. I do apologize for those audio issues early on. I don't understand why that was happening. And I apologize for the audio glitches again. I think it's OBS, considering I've streamed many times before this and never had them. So I will try to revert my stream, or my OBS version down, and hopefully we won't have those issues again. Yeah, thank you for showing up. Thank you for all the people lurking, and thank you to all the people watching on YouTube. Hope you had a good time. Again, you can ask me specific questions on YouTube, on here, or in my Discord channel, which is linked below both the stream and the YouTube channel, or the YouTube video. So thank you again for showing up, and everybody have a nice evening.